Good evening, everyone. And we're moving into something that I think is probably hard to define, the buzz about boutique hotels. And I think everyone who runs a small hotel just says, I'm running a boutique hotel. And is it really a boutique hotel? And I think that's what we're here to discuss today and try and see what are the ins and outs of running a boutique hotel and why is there such a buzz around it. So for the purpose of this discussion, I just Googled up to see what exactly is the definition of a boutique hotel, because there isn't a clear definition as such. People like STR, I'm told, put the number at anything less than 200 rooms, which in case would be most hotels in Sri Lanka. And there are other definitions, say anything up to 100 rooms could be defined as a boutique hotel. But I think what we would like to go with is a property that has probably between 10 to 100 or 150 rooms maybe, something that is small, stylish, has an intimate atmosphere, probably an idiosyncratic style, personalized attention, and probably styled accommodation. And these would probably be things that make a boutique hotel differ from a larger chain hotel. So in order to start off my questions for the evening, I'd probably ask Malik the first question. Malik, what do you think it is about boutique hotels that seem to be drawing more and more people to them?
Suranjith, I think boutique hotels are nothing new. A lot of the family-owned wayside inns, a lot of the smaller resorts globally they've been around for a century. They've become more prominent now as you've got some sort of branding elements that have come in, and it started out with say the Amans and some other groups like that, which kind of gave it a sort of a bit of a formality. But and boutique hotels in Sri Lanka, we have a higher than average proportion of boutique hotels. Largely, one of the positive outcomes, if you could consider that, was that because of the conflict, we didn't have a massive tourism onrush. So a lot of the developments, like the first one that we did was Ceylon Tea Trails, was boutique because it was individual families, small groups setting up something quite idiosyncratic. So that's one reason why tourism in Sri Lanka, one of the key features is lots of small, interesting, intimate properties, still offering a pretty good standard, more so than many other countries in the region, which have had mass tourism for a longer period. But you answered some of the points earlier. Boutique properties, personality, exclusivity, small and intimate, I think 20 to 30 is a nice number in terms of room count. Remote locations, pristine, surrounded by nature. Boutique hotels in cities are unusual. Very personalized service. Guests are known by name. Preferences are picked up. You'll hear over here a guest saying they like something, and that's actualized, and they're delighted. One guest at a time. It's that whole mentality. No front desks, no buffets. Unique signature in terms of your cuisine, and a very localized sense of place. So in that context, Relais Chateau, which our three resorts are members of, kind of signify that, because they're the original boutique hotel circuit, because everyone now talks of authentic experiences, but they started in the 1920s connecting family-owned wayside inns that were within 10 to 20 kilometers of each other in France. So that ethos to me exemplifies boutique properties, because each property, unbranded, non-corporate, has to have its own ethos. Even though it's 5 kilometers apart or 10 kilometers apart, they've got to be very, very individual. So I think that, in my view, is a definition of a boutique hotel. Not as some, well, the hoteliers, we know this, but there are many consumers who think boutique means small. Not really. That's just one aspect of it.
Just an add-on to that same question, what do you think is the typical guest of a boutique hotel? Like, what is their psychographic profile from a marketing perspective?
If you're looking at a boutique or a small luxury property, you're looking at affluent travelers, who are looking for privacy, intimacy, who want to get away from a corporate experience which they have in their day-to-day life back wherever they work. And so you're looking at people who've got plenty of material possessions, they're looking for experiences, or you've got, interestingly, millennials who don't want material things, who spend more money on experiences. So you're looking at generally an affluent traveler. I mean, in our experience, it's 40 plus. In our case, you're looking at people who travel 6 to 8 times a year, and who want the good things in life and who want to connect, who don't necessarily want a television or a telephone or 10 restaurants. It's the antithesis of, they're looking at switching off something residential in nature. They come to our hotels, they don't have keys. I'm sure some of the hoteliers, they would be aghast when you say there's no key, because you don't need a key. So I think that's what guests come, certainly in our case and a few other boutique properties, where they want to be in a non-conventional environment. And generally you're looking at the affluent traveler, but it's lovely to see millennials who are splashing out because they don't need to buy a car, they don't need to buy a house, so they spend their money on these experiences, as we all know. So that bodes very well for the future of boutique hotels.
Thanks, Malik. And Malik just gave us a perspective from Resplendent Ceylon, who've been pioneering in the boutique space in Sri Lanka, first with Ceylon Tea Trails and thereafter with Cape Valigama and Wild Coast down in Yala. I'd like to hear from Lokesh from Accor, a far larger hotel group that has also made a foray into the more lifestyle space. And the question I'd like to ask you, Lokesh, is, from an investment perspective, does investing in boutique hotels offer the relative return when it can't offer the economies of scale of the larger chain hotels, particularly at an operational level? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think before that, while I agree with Malik, boutique hotels are entirely about the experience. The experience, it's about the local, where you are. It's being immersed in that. But I think where boutique hotels may not necessarily, or they may have expanded, is it's not so much, it's not always the smaller 20, 30, pushing more towards the upper end or the luxury level. I think boutique has moved towards an experience, even in cities, even other alternate locations, and while it was at the upper end, possibly even at the mid-scale space. When I think of some of our brands, such as Mama Shelter or 25 Hours, these are city experiences, but there's experience from the very beginning of the design. There's a story woven into it. There's experience at the food and beverage level. It's storytelling. You have a meal, you walk out to the art gallery, you do something fun, you walk up. You're in Berlin, you have the bikini hotel themed around a bikini, you've got the monkey bar where people are lining up. So to me, I think this expansion's happened, and it's happened because of, I guess, a lot of the chain hotels and as we operate in different markets and segments. To make money, I think, so from a development perspective, boutique hotels are not necessarily always, and I'm using the word boutique loosely, greenfield. I think one of the biggest advantages is readaptive use. You're really being able to go into certain locations, areas, turn an office, turn a warehouse into hotels, as an example. You're not hemmed in by the traditional hotel marble, stone, XYZ toiletries. You're designing, you're able to break out of those shackles, you're designing differently. You're designing with the guest in mind from day one. And because you're not adhering to a lot of the traditional thoughts around hotels, it does help improve your development cost. I'll just use an example once again, at 25 Hours, because we've just done some work on that. We're talking about the build cost, typically of a Novotel, that you're running very high GOP margins, and these are hotels in Europe, so relative to Europe. And on the competitive set, on an RGI level, that particular hotel competes with the Waldorf, the Sofitel, and the Steigenberger for that area. But that's a chain running those. I think your overall design, your operating costs would get toned down. Now, would you make money? I'm not sure an Accor or one of us running a 30-room hotel is probably is going to get you the returns. But for an individual owner, it would.
That's all I could afford. That's why I had to be boutique.
So that's one of the ways. So I think it really depends on the asset, the location, and how you're running it and who's running it. But there is, and also not every investor or owner is a boutique hotel owner. So you're not going to have a massive oversupply of. You shouldn't ideally of hotels of this nature.
Malik might be able to comment on this more because he's the only Sri Lankan panelist on this panel. I think in Sri Lanka there seems to be quite an oversupply of villas and smaller properties. And to some extent, it's some of these properties that have really put Sri Lanka on the map in the last few years because we've really had an absence of the international chains in the destination. And given that the entry cost is relatively low compared to a 100 or 150 roomed hotel or a 200 roomed hotel, if the economies of scale are actually there, that could result in so many people entering into a relatively small space, resulting in an oversupply. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that could drop your average rates within the boutique hotels down when you have lots of boutique hotels to compete against?
That issue is there, and we're kind of experiencing it in the absence of strong promotion to grow the formal sector numbers. But it depends on how distinctive your product is. Certainly that flurry of villas which came largely from the Hong Kong Brits with a couple of personalities on the South Coast who created that Serendip Riviera single-handedly. I must say hats off to them because they created that new wave of Sri Lankan tourism, and we're still kind of riding that wave up till about 2000, around that time. And people bought villas. They loved Sri Lanka for their own use, and they decided to put it into the pool. But I don't think there would necessarily be a dilution because it depends on how distinctive your product is, where it is, because all the villas are clustered together in one place. And the other point is bill costs are not necessarily, when you say boutique, I know there are so many differentiations, but you could still hit $350,000 to $500,000 a key on a boutique property. A lot depends obviously on your ADR, but it doesn't mean that boutique properties are cheaper per key. It's actually more expensive than a bigger property, but of course
But the total cost of investment.
Total cost, but of course your break-evens can be lower because of higher ADR. But I don't think that if it's an authentic product, that an increase in supply, because as I said earlier, you want to create authentic products in interesting locations. Now, if everyone does that, then of course it becomes congested. But I think there's a development of, say, villa-style products. If they're all me too, then they're not distinctive. So I really don't see that as a big threat.
Okay. Abid, I'd like to ask you the next question. So Abid's from Dream Hotels, taking care of the Asia, Middle East and Africa. And Dream Hotels are known to be a brand that have been developed on the basis of edgy style and clearly defined customer experiences. Just a question to you is, how is that being received from your customers, and what has your experience with Dream Hotels been like?
Our company's birthplace was New York. That's where our first branded hotel came about. And it's been extremely well received. Right from the beginning, the conceptualizing of that hotel was a boutique environment, very, very design-centric hotel, but also lifestyle components. So I was mentioning earlier that our New York downtown hotel has been in operations nearly 10 years now, a hotel that is approximately about 275 keys or so, does close to $42 million in food and beverage revenue annualized. It is big numbers. So it's not just dependent on hotel guests. It is drawing local community to come in and use the facilities. And I don't know if Achin is in the room, but he was talking about earlier today, why can the hotel not have other facilities the local community can utilize? Believe you me, in New York downtown, we've got a salon that takes 6 months for people to get a booking, to get their hair cut. And they're not shy about asking you what to charge. We've got a tattoo artist in the middle of the lobby, and it creates a vibe that is unique to that hotel. Now, just because it's worked in New York doesn't necessarily mean it can be transported across the globe, but that vibe, that activation of the public space, whether it is through food and beverage or other facilities, that's what people are looking for. And we've had tremendous success and tremendous following.
Oh, it's a tattoo artist in the middle of the lobby.
Can we see your tattoo?
Still being worked on.
Ante, just a quick question to you. Ante is from the Dusit group. And the question to you, Ante, is how does a brand like Dusit, that has been positioned on the basis of Thai hospitality and luxury, which is usually quite traditional, attempt to redefine its space and cater to the traveler who's looking for some of the key characteristics that define a boutique hotel?
Interesting question, for sure. First of all, I think it's interesting to see that we're kind of, although we are all within this industry for a long, long time, we're still circling around the definition of a boutique hotel. I think that if we just go a few decades back, we can see that the classification of hotels has been pretty much star rated. Governmental agencies and governments rating and classifying certain and endorsing certain quality of service for hotels, and of course lately that all has completely shifted, where you have not only consumer rating and STR chain scale, which is actually a performance rating. So I think that it's very much becoming a blurred space, and some of the players are seeing that as cluttered, and some of them are seeing that as an opportunity. Just by observing what the main hotel chains are doing right now by holding huge amount of hotel brands in their portfolio, I think actually speaks of the importance of having a right product in terms of the brand for each particular subcategory or subclass of a hotel. When it comes to, I think also people speak of this boutique hotel kind of as a phenomenon, but in a real sense, if you look at it from a point of just any economic industry, we see that especially specialization is just a natural part of any evolution. And of course, every single player on the market wants to differentiate themselves. And in that journey, of course, boutique hotels or smaller size properties are able to experiment and put the entrepreneurial spirit much more easily than a full-fledged big 700, 500 key hotels, where the decisions are very costly. And the experiments can bring huge risks to the business. So the experimentation started, of course, with the physical aspects of the space, with the design, but then we ventured into the experience. We at Dusit, we're very proud of our 65 years of heritage, Thai hospitality. Everything was pretty much, revolving around our 5-star. We created 4 brands throughout the history, all of them being full service. However, the consumer behavior is changing, and people are looking for more experience. And actually, there are consumers out there that are looking for more experience outside of the room. And at the end, to cater to that market, we went out with a Sai brand. Which is our first limited service brand that is actually speaking of integrating a local community experience into the overall competitive offer. Creating a communal space, eat, work, play area, reducing the rooms, and actually working the other way around in terms of ROI. Because as there is a compression on margins and economies of scale in terms of the size of the property, we are trying to create a model that, and actually we're not trying to invent the wheel, but I think, there has been so many attempts out there and successful stories that actually create a brand product that works on the ROI, on the development side, on the actual reduction of development costs, and letting the market do its game. Yeah, I mean, I think it's very much and also I think that from the point of, just to say, we as a company, we most often partner with entrepreneurial capital, and of course the investment ticket size is smaller than within institutionals, so that actually brings us to the league of players that are bringing us kind of maybe smaller properties overall. So on average, our portfolio, our average size of the hotel is decreasing over time. Yes, that's the general trend.
Interesting that Dusit is also getting on to this whole experiential lifestyle kind of bandwagon, if you may call it that, and also where Accor is concerned, Lokesh. You've got your mainstream brands like your Mercures, but you've also made big investments into the lifestyle brands like 25 Hours and Mama Shelter that you just spoke about. What has been your learning from some of those investments? And first of all, what was the thinking behind the investments into those brands? And what has been the learning? And have you been able to take some of that learning into brands like Mercure that are established brands?
Well, sure. Probably over the last 5 years, Accor's journey has been there's been a shift in thinking, and we've evolved from being a product-centric company towards a more consumer-centric, where we'd really like to be part of the customer experience at more than one level. Something that Abid spoke about earlier is something we're pushing hard for Accor Local, which is where the hotels, the hotel concierge, or even the smaller ibises, they're your holding pen for your courier and flower delivery, your laundry delivery. We provide catering services around, so that's something we're really trying to push. One element, we've ventured into the private rental space with One Fine Stay, and concierge services, among others, with John Paul. So I'm going to reference our CEO, Sebastian, and the way he talks about our having brands and how it's led up to these is any of us having 20 or 30 friends, and you've got friends you'd like to go to the gym with, you'd like to go to office with, you'd like to go to the beach with, go to the club with. And in a way, that's how we're looking at our brands. You want to go on a wellness break, retreat, there's the Banyan Tree. You want to look at a stay with the family, there's Sofitel. You're traveling for work, like to have a fun weekend added on, you're in Paris, there's Mama Shelter. So we've actually ventured out, and over the last 3 years, we've invested in the model we followed is acquisition, collaboration, and between these, we've invested in Mama Shelter, a sizable stake, followed by 25 Hours Hotels, and last year we acquired 50% of SBE, which owns the SLS, Delano, Morgan's, Mondrian brands. And interestingly, we've invested in something called 21C Hotels in North America, which is 11 hotels attached to museums of modern art, which were privately held. Now, with all of these, one key learning for us, and something which we're pushing, is that we realize that there's a fair degree of creativity, innovation, which has gone into these products. And we also recognize, at least we do, that for us, if we were to roll these up entirely, we'd Accorize them, and possibly some Mama might become a Mercure. So we'd like them to retain the individuality. The creators and the owners are still the investor partners. They're very much involved in any new products that we're designing, we're building, and they basically take the lead on that. SLS, Sam Nazaran effectively runs the business in North America, and there's a complete technical team, so any new hotels that we do, these are the guys who come up. And there's a difference in thinking from a mainstream hotelier, we recognize that. And to me, I think that's been one of the biggest learnings we've had, we'd like to continue with. From the consumer perspective, as I said, it opens up an offering, but at the same time, it brings the power of distribution and loyalty to these brands and how we sell them out there. Probably that would be the biggest learning. Why wouldn't we take it to a Mercure? Two different things entirely, and I think there is a market for Mercure, and there's very much a market for one of these products. We want to be able to offer them both.
Okay. So different brand for a different mode, pretty much.
And interestingly, for our partners, they're owners, individuals who want to own a boutique lifestyle. It's blurred. We're able to offer that. Being a traditional hotel company, but at the same time being able to offer the benefits and the thinking and the creativity of these smaller individual hotel developers.
Malik, the next question is to you. Ceylon Tea Trails was spoken about earlier today as well before you got here, and your journey in defining the space for Tea Trails has been outstanding, and I would really like to hear from you on what some of the key principles you followed with Tea Trails were that worked, and how has it been different with Cape Palligama and Wild Coast?
Yeah, I mean, Tea Trails it never started out being a hotel project. It was really something done out of passion for Ceylon tea. For those of you who don't know, you would know that we had this conflict from 83 to about 2009, and at that time tourism really, no one was looking at big projects, but there was a ceasefire in 2001, and we had a lot of people who drank Dilmah tea writing in saying, could we visit your tea estates, could we visit your country, because the tourism outreach was weak by the tourist board. So we welcomed them and we took people around on a bit of a tour, and they loved the scenic tea country. People say beaches, but our tea country is quite special. And from there, we put them up in old tea planters' bungalows, which were in pretty bad condition. And then we realized that there was a business model here, and we refurbished these bungalows, which are between 2 and 15 kilometers apart. They're all very, very different, and it's the original bungalows. Of course, we changed the interiors around, so you've got all your creature comforts. But it started out never to be a hotel. It was going to be residential. We were going to take guests, but at that time, I didn't know much about hotels. I know a little bit more now, but still, we never took any hotel concepts in. Had we done that, some of the things we've done, we would have ruled out from day one, in terms of the size of kitchens, the back of house versus front of house, and so on. So the whole thing was predicated on guests living the life of a tea planter of the 1920s. So in that space, it's pretty obvious what should be done, and it's been quite successful. And I'm happy to say that in terms of TripAdvisor, not only does it top the rankings in Sri Lanka, it's even in the world rankings for service, because in that environment where it's 5 or 6 rooms for a bungalow, you can lavish top-notch service on a guest, and it's a different experience. As we rolled out quite a bit later, because I never expected Tea Trails to be a success, and it was, and then we thought, look, where do guests go from here? And they'll go to the beach, and maybe there wasn't products of that caliber. Cape Palligama was on a 12-acre coconut estate on a very sort of a stunning headland. We have very few headlands in Sri Lanka. Most of the lands are flat. So that was a different product. We worked with Lek Bunag, Thai architect, and that was more of a conventional hotel in the sense that we worked with specialists and we created these really amazing villas. But what's special about Palligama, I think, is the location, the headland with these 270-degree views, and to be honest, in the first year or two, we made every single mistake in the book. I learned the hard way, changed all our staff around, changed our concepts around. When we first built Cape Palligama, we thought we'd run it like Tea Trails. That's all we knew. We were not hoteliers. So it was all inclusive, which scared people off because our entry rates were $1,000, right? And at that time, Sri Lanka wasn't ready for it. And now we've gone back to a BB model. But so we made a lot of mistakes along the way, but Palligama has really established itself, and I'm happy that in the Condé Nast Traveler USA Readers Awards of last year, it was in number 18 in all the world. So we've obviously done something right, but we've learned the hard way because we didn't have a SOP, we didn't have a brand standard, we didn't have anything to fall back on. When we make a mistake, we'll fix it. Wild Coast was a safari lodge on a beach. So there, again, because the fact that we're not a conventional hotel company, we didn't have a brand standard. So when the architects or the designers who we found said, look, what's your brand standard? We sort of gave them a blank sheet of paper and said, we don't have a standard. If you had a standard, to be honest, we wouldn't have come up with something so radical and well received like what we have there. But it's perfect for that location, very sustainable. kind of like spaceships that have landed in the middle of the jungle. And I must say, with all the mistakes we made at Veligama, which have now been corrected, we were very quick in fixing the issues at Wild Coast. But the whole idea was that it's not a chain. It's very much in the Relais Chateau ethos that a guest who stays at one has no idea that is connected to the other. They do, because we've got a sort of subtle, resplendent Ceylon, which was a reluctantly we had to create a name for the circuit because you couldn't operate at trade shows and all that with the individual names. But it's tea trails, it's Cape Veligama, it's Wild Coast Lodge. It's not Resplendent, Wild Coast, Resplendent tea trails. We can do that because we're small, we're a family business. I mean, for larger hotel companies, that's probably unthinkable. But the whole idea was that each of the resorts were a very deliberate step as you journey through Sri Lanka. And our vision is to have 6 resorts in all. Up till about the early 80s, a lot of Hollywood blockbusters were filmed in Sri Lanka. A lot of the Elizabeth Taylor, Bridge on the River Kwai, and the Indiana Jones movies, because we offer 6 or 7 countries in one. You can have Scotland up in the tea country, you can have Horton Plains, you can do the Caribbean, Bridge on the River Kwai. Burma was here in Kitulgala. Indiana Jones, the jungles of Africa was somewhere near Kandy. So it's such a distinctive country that you can actually fly 5 or 10 minutes, and we encourage our guests to fly use a float plane. Every 5 minutes you're in a different country. So the whole idea, quite accidental, was that you create this unique circuit, and as you go from one to another, no resort is even the slightest bit alike. The only thing is we know how you like your tea, we know how you like what kind of jam you like, which is very subtle, but the whole thing was sort of, it was an accidental concoction, which Touchwood has come right, but it's still very small. I don't think you can extrapolate it on a larger scale. But it's very much driven by passion and not standards and processes which we can do because it's
but interestingly, that you kept the individual identity of each property despite having 3 properties.
Yeah.
Now, that's only possible in a very small setting.
Yeah.
And it's probably hard to replicate when you are a larger chain.
Yes, yeah, I mean a large chain, yes, but you can still go up to a certain point because I think people, consumers want, there is an affinity for independent properties, that whole non-branded thing. So yeah, I think up to 6, 10 properties you can, but anything beyond that, it's hard.
Abid, a question to you. Dream Hotels seem to be growing their footprint in Asia, and I've seen quite a few properties in the pipeline in India, Maldives, Philippines, and Qatar from your website. First, what are your thoughts on entering Sri Lanka? And do you think Sri Lanka is ready for one of your brands to come in terms of the type of travelers we're currently attracting?
Look, I think readiness of Sri Lanka as a destination and where Sri Lanka is on the life cycle of tourism, that has been talked about all morning, so I don't think I would repeat that, other than that we feel, we concur with all the conversations that have occurred, that Sri Lanka is ripe for growth and we want to be part of that growth. Now, Sri Lanka as a destination still has to position and identify itself as a brand. There are varying different perceptions of what Sri Lanka is all about, whether it is a backpacker's haven or is it a luxury market. That all has to be sorted out, but be that as it may, at the end of the day, there are a lot of people that are wanting to come in and experience this, not only from the different topographies that are available, different climates that are available, but more importantly, the cultural elements. And I think David had talked about that earlier today. Whilst there are lots and lots and lots of destinations around the world that can talk about sand, sea, and sun, the cultural elements are indigenous to that destination and they can never be replicated. And I think Sri Lanka has that unequivocally a unique point to offer. Now, when we talk about bringing our brands into this market that are, again, boutique lifestyle components with food and beverage, cuisine is a big element, entertainment is a big element, I think that could match very well. Also, the psychographics of the consumer that is traveling, it fits the brands and their desire as to what they would like to see in the hospitality offering. So we would love to be present with our brands in Sri Lanka, in different parts of Sri Lanka.
It's great to hear. I'm sure there are investors in the audience who might speak to you at the end of this meeting. Lokesh, well, Accor's been looking at entering the Sri Lanka market for a while, and I believe you are present with Movenpick currently. But the traditional or the typical boutique hotel guest is usually paying a higher rate, probably is a little fussier than your average mainstream client. Do you think as a destination we have the infrastructure in place to cater to such a guest?
Well, why not? I mean, Malik's doing it. The infrastructure is there, and I think what's been discussed in the morning, the changes that are going to happen, how it's going to evolve. So I can only talk in context of where it is. Again, boutique lifestyle, you'd also develop or build these hotels keeping that aspect in mind, and there is a lead time to when they come up. Now, if I was to put an A product in a location to which access is still 6 or 7 hours away, it might not work. But something interesting in Colombo, a differentiated resort development, absolutely. I think it's a very simple answer, but I really can't say more than that. It really depends on what you're developing.
Yeah, and where it is, I suppose. Ante, well, we spoke about service in a boutique hotel and that personalized aspect that Malik spoke about, the subtle nuances of the requirements of a guest and their preference of jam or how they like their tea, and that aspect of service delivery, which is important to a guest who stays in a boutique hotel, is important. What's your take on the manpower available in Sri Lanka? Do you think there is a lack of trained people who can service these boutique hotel guests? I know Dusit is building service residences, I believe, down in the south.
We've been quite fortunate to enter Sri Lanka through with our esteemed partners here who are doing Dusitani in Balapitiya, which is a product which is under development, a total of about 170 plus keys. That is going to have a resi component. But the interesting part about that is that, speaking of boutique hotels, if this was a small size development, probably the residential component as an investment would not really work out because it would not be able to generate proper returns for the unit buyers. So the project and we at the same time needed to have a project of a bit of a larger scale, of course. But certainly more than just 100 keys. On the other hand, I think that when it comes to the service, we're not in the driver's seat when it comes to the investment community because the investments will happen as the market drives them. And we being non-investment in this country and being on the asset-light basis, of course, are more in a reactive mode. And nevertheless, what we are doing on what we call infrastructural levels is through our unit or side division of the company, Dusit Education. We have partnered with AMEA Global here to do a center for hospitality excellence in Colombo, which is going to be the concept pretty much the same what we're doing in Manila with the Paul Bocuse Institute and the EHL certified school, which is cross-integrated with a hotel. Very, very interesting concept, and I think that's something that we are kind of pioneering, taking it a little further than the Icon Hotel in Hong Kong. So that's one of the developments which we are very proud of, and that we believe that will contribute to the overall tourism development.
So is that because you felt there was a gap in the market then in Sri Lanka in terms of availability of good trained staff?
Yeah, there's a gap and there's an opportunity at the same time. So we really wanted to seize that opportunity, and we believe that there is a great contribution effect, not only toward the overall industry, but also toward ourselves who are having certain products and believe to have even more on the marketplace. So Sri Lanka is an important market for us, and I think a place with a very strong identity as a destination overall. Yes, in the quest of searching and proliferating in itself, but overall with a very strong identity. So,
okay. I think labor pool and the availability of skills for this industry is being challenged, and it might be a generational thing where a lot of the millennials are not too enthralled by having to work when their friends are playing, and they have to work in this industry. But it behooves the industry to be able to attract and train people. Sri Lanka is no different. As the market matures, as different clients come in, the expectations grow, hence the skill level has to grow. So it's great to see that the brands and the industry is committed to developing the labor pool.
Most certainly, because I think it's with that training that they would be able to meet the demands of what the travelers of the future are looking for sure. Just another question in terms of what some of the larger chains bring to the table in terms of loyalty programs and the stickiness that it creates to customers. Sometimes boutique hotels can't compete on that front, and it's hard to get a customer back because there isn't a loyalty scheme that is in place or a network. I suppose with regards to T-Trails, is Relay and Chateau providing that, they come back to a...
I mean, if you're looking at customer loyalty,
yes,
there are CRM software you can use, but of course in terms of interchanging, you need to look at a GHA or a Autograph or there are circuits like that. But I think now if you want customer loyalty, you certainly don't need to your same property, then you honestly don't need a brand because you can use it using your CRM. But if you're looking at obviously sharing points, switching it across, then you're at a disadvantage. But I know GHA works with some of the smaller groups, and there may be others as well. Okay.
Also another question, probably Malik, you might be able to answer this, or even Abid for that matter. When a boutique hotel chain grows, one thing about a boutique hotel is that you want that individuality and character to be there. But the more you grow, you become more corporate. It's a fine balance in terms of growing and drawing from the economies of scale in terms of operation, but also maintaining that individuality that the property demands or the boutique hotel itself demands. How do you balance that dilemma?
It's probably a dilemma that I won't have to face because I don't think I'll grow that big. But the point is that as you develop, then obviously you need to be a lot more creative, and you need to, there'll be some element of standardization, but I think a lot depends on what location you're in and what experiences you offer. There are larger brands which have 20, 30 boutique properties which are still individual. It can be done, but it can be harder. But I think it all depends on whether you build the right kind of property in the right kind of location. If it has a story, that's fine. If it doesn't have a story, then it's more of a challenge.
So creating the quintessential stories which the larger resorts are also planning on doing pretty much.
The smaller you are, of course, the more agile. And this is what, again, I think we are facing, and all of us in the operator field. You want to make the boutique brands or boutique hotels as local as possible, as localized as possible, as creative as possible. On the other hand, you're limited by certain brand standards, so it's a double-edged sword. You really want to standardize it, and the more you do, the more local flair this particular property is going to lose. So I think it's not easy. It's not easy to really find the right balance. Maybe Lokesh.
If I may add to that, I think the brands grew on the base of consistency. So that's what the brand was associated with. People knew what to expect. So maybe the guardrails and legacy brands are narrower, but when you get to the boutique environment and lifestyle environment, maybe the gap can be a bit wider. So you still have the latitude of adjusting to the local market and meeting the expectation, so it's not so myopic that one size fits all. There are adaptations of the DNA that can be applied for each of the units. And I think that's what makes the boutique lifestyle hotels more desirable.
So just to conclude, if I may ask you, if you're giving one message to someone who's operating boutique hotels today in order to get it right, what would that one message be? Let's start with Malik and we'll...
One word I'd say is passion.
Know your numbers.
Know your numbers. Okay.
Experiential.
Okay. You've heard from the professionals. Passion, authentic, know your numbers, and experiential. And that really is what defines boutique hotels. And I really believe that that's what people are drawn to. And this buzz is being created as a result of all that. So thank you very much.